Reggie Fils-Aimé, you, my good sir, yes, you with that beautiful face, are a liar. I hate to call you that, but you're lying about some things. Nintendo, the great company known as Nintendo, you're also a liar too. There have been 2 instances recently where I'm just saying to myself, Nintendo, you're kind of lying about this situation. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. Of course, you're going to want to protect what you're working on. You're going to want to protect what's going on within your company, and of course, things you haven't announced yet. But right before I went on vacation for Thanksgiving, it was of course revealed that Reggie said that there was no plans for the N64 Classic to be coming out anytime soon, and I was just kind of like, okay, let's not get wild here. And then of course you have all the Skyward Sword HD things that are going on that just happened today, where Nintendo has come out and said, no, there's no Skyward Sword HD for the Switch, and I'm like, okay, you're lying about both of these things, and I think that I have enough evidence where I can prove that you are probably lying about these things. Now, what is Nintendo lying about? Why are they lying about it? And why do I feel like they are lying about it? Sit back, relax, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and let's talk about why Nintendo is lying to us, but I guess it's okay.
Hey, RGT 85. Hey, Sean.
Oh my God, it's Stevie Richards! So the N64 Classic is something we've talked about a lot on this channel, and of course there's been some rumors about it, there's been some facts, there's been some evidence, and now we have concrete statements from Nintendo themselves that sort of are leading people to believe that the N64 Classic isn't happening. When Reggie came out and said that the N64 Classic wasn't coming out, all of these people made videos on it on YouTube, and I was kind of like, why? I feel like we should all know that they're probably doing a bit of misdirection with this, because there's so much evidence that it does exist, there's so much evidence that it would be a real thing, that it just doesn't make sense to me. But to catch you up to speed, of course we have seen some things with the N64 Classic, but around November 15th, Reggie actually made a statement on the N64 Classic and said the following. We were clear when we did the first 2 Classic series that for us, they were limited time opportunities, that they were a way for us as a business to bridge from the conclusion of Wii U as a hardware system to the launch of the Nintendo Switch. That was a very strategic decision. We launched the NES Classic system. So while many consumers may have been anticipating something, we view these as limited time opportunities. We've also now been very clear that as the consumer looks forward to engaging with our classic content, that is going to be happening more and more with our subscription service. Okay, that's a very, very PR statement. There's a lot of holes in this statement as well, and a lot of just interesting things. So to start things off, he doesn't even allude to the SNES Classic. He really just talks about the NES Classic. That's a very strategic decision. We launched the NES Classic. And then, of course, they released the SNES Classic. And the Nintendo Switch was already out when the SNES Classic came out. You gotta remember that. So it's kind of like, well, what were you bridging there with the SNES Classic? The NES Classic, I'll buy that explanation. You wanted to have something for consumers to get their hands on. But the SNES Classic was released after the Nintendo Switch, so right there, that logic is pretty much thrown out the window. You weren't trying to bridge anything. And look at it from a business perspective. That's one of the main things you have to do with this. Nintendo sold a lot of NES and SNES Classic systems. They've amassed over 10 million sold for those 2 systems. And it's like, is someone at Nintendo just sitting there like, well, you know, we got this NES Classic, we got this SNES Classic, they're selling really well. I don't think we should pursue this any further. No, of course not. This is a business. This is a business. Your thing as a business is to make money, to be profitable, to be successful. Why would you not want to continue this NES and this classic lineup that's doing so well for you? Because let's be honest, after the licensing to get the games on the system, these things are dirt cheap to make. That's why you see so many Chinese knockoffs of things like the NES Classic, because it's dirt cheap to make if you're not acquiring licensing and things like that. Nintendo probably already has all the licensing paid off for these things. It probably costs pennies on the dollar to manufacture these hunks of plastic with an emulator and ROMs built onto it, but Nintendo is making tons of money on these things. And if they were a limited time thing like Reggie is trying to say, why would you even release the NES Classic once again? They did a re-release of that system because it was popular, it made them money, and Nintendo wanted to make more money. Why would you release the SNES Classic after the Nintendo Switch came out if this was to bridge us between the Wii U and the Nintendo Switch? Because it made money. It made money. And then of course you have the freaking patent. Do you remember the freaking patent? The patent is the exact same look as the NES and the SNES Classic logo information was. And it pretty much said this is an N64 controller patent that looks exactly like the Classic lineup. So if there's proof and there's reasoning beyond what Reggie has said that you could sort of pick apart what he's saying, why would Nintendo deny that the N64 Classic is in development? Because honestly, I think a lot of people are under the mindset that it is in development, especially if you look at it from a business perspective, if you look at it from the factual perspective of it. There are things going on with the N64 Classic that just have not been revealed yet, and that's okay. I understand that they are wanting to, hold what they have close to them and things like that, because they don't want this information to get out before they want this information to get out, of course. They want to announce something like this. They want to reveal something like this. So it's really just a misdirection. I'm actually surprised so many people actually ran with it and said that the N64 Classic wasn't coming after this statement, because if you would have looked a little deeper into this statement and looked at the factual stuff, like, it's pretty clear that the damn thing is coming one way or another. So I don't know. I definitely think Reggie is lying out his ass on this. I completely expect the N64 Classic to be a thing, and I think there's enough proof and evidence out there to show that yes, this is an actual thing. Now, the Skyward Sword HD situation is definitely very unique as well. This is a real situation that just sort of crept up out of nowhere, but there's been some hints along the way that this is a potential thing, and I feel once again that Nintendo is just lying about this. So this whole thing originated where Mr. Aonuma appeared on stage during the Legend of Zelda Musicals concert in Osaka, Japan, and one of the things he said was, "I know what you're thinking, Skyward Sword for Switch, right?" Why the hell would you say that? Why would you go out on stage and just randomly say, "I know what you're thinking, Skyward Sword for Switch," right? Like, I don't think anyone at this concert was necessarily thinking that. I think they were thinking, oh, we're here to hear the Legend of Zelda music. That's pretty cool. But yeah, so Aonuma pretty much planted this seed into people's minds that Skyward Sword HD was coming to the Nintendo Switch. And of course, this is something that Aonuma has teased before. Back in a 2016 interview with IGN, Aonuma said the following on the potential about Skyward Sword HD for another console. Yes, it's definitely possible. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is a result of what we wanted to expand and make a better Skyward Sword. It's like an evolved or expanded version. Putting out an HD version of Skyward Sword and tossing it into the mix might be a little weird. It's always a possibility, so I don't really know. So this has been something that obviously has been talked about and thought about for a long time, and I'll get into the reasons of probably why they would want to do a Skyward Sword HD remake in just a minute. But then, of course, Eurogamer released that Nintendo contacted them and said the following: "At this time, we have no plans to release The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword on the Nintendo Switch." Oh, at this time. Let's talk about the term "at this time," because this is not the first time that Nintendo has said something like this and then revealed something sometimes days later. Remember the DS Lite? Nintendo pretty much shot down the DS Lite, said it wasn't a thing, said it wasn't coming out, and then like the next day they unveiled the DS Lite. Literally after saying it's not a thing, they revealed it. Why? Because at that time they were not ready to talk about it, and that's really what this all boils down to. A Skyward Sword HD remake makes perfect sense. We already know from a previous video that I did that Nintendo is hiring someone to do a Legend of Zelda project. Now, what that project is, we still don't know. I've heard various things about it. I've heard that maybe it's not going to be Skyward Sword HD that particular project is hiring for, but it could potentially be. We won't really know the answers to that. But at the end of the day, Skyward Sword HD makes perfect sense, because when you look at things from a business perspective, it's one of the games for the Legend of Zelda series that never really got a proper chance to shine. Skyward Sword on the Wii sold 3.4 million units worldwide. And you might be saying to yourself, well, that's not bad, 3.4 million units, but that was on the Wii, and the Wii sold nearly 102 million units worldwide at the last time of reporting for it. So that is a very minuscule amount. Not a lot of people picked up Skyward Sword, and some of that is pretty much attributed to the motion controls, the mandatory motion controls that Skyward Sword had on the Wii. Honestly, to be perfectly honest with you guys, Skyward Sword is the only mainline Legend of Zelda game I have never completed, because I got bored with the Wii Motion Plus controls of the game. It was cool, I liked it, but I didn't want to play a full Legend of Zelda game with a mandatory motion control system, and I feel like that sort of turned off a lot of people. Nintendo definitely took a risk with that game by mandating the motion controls, and for some people it worked, for some people it didn't. Some people just didn't want to waggle their arm around for hours and hours and hours, because the Legend of Zelda is a long game. It's not a game that you're going to beat in 1 or 2 sittings, more than likely, unless you just have a lot of caffeine and tacos to go on. But yeah, like the Legend of Zelda Zelda games take a lot of time. They're about exploration. They're about finding different things, going into different areas, meeting new characters and things like that. So to me, to have mandatory motion controls sort of hindered that game. And it's just like, it makes perfect sense. It's the one game that has been released recently in the Legend of Zelda series that has not gotten the HD treatment that probably deserves the HD treatment. Look at the graphical style of that game. It was absolutely gorgeous, but it was limited to standard definition because of the Wii's system capabilities and the fact that it was not an HD system. We of course saw Twilight Princess get the HD remake. You had The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time get remade for the 3DS. You had Majora's Mask get remade for the 3DS. So it's not outside the realm of possibility for these games to be brought back into the future. Nintendo definitely wants to release another Legend of Zelda game before the next new Legend of Zelda game, and Skyward Sword HD is the perfect candidate for that. It makes perfect sense. You have gyro controls in the Nintendo Switch already, and you could just make it optional. You don't have to make it mandatory. Yes, it would require some retooling and things like that, but you're gonna have to retool the game anyways to make it HD. I'm sure that you can figure out a way to make the controls more simple and make the controls more applicable on the Nintendo Switch. Now, the real thing that we have to go on here is, why would Nintendo lie about these two things? And it's like I said before, it just makes sense. Nintendo doesn't want to reveal everything just whenever a random press person contacts them, or because someone says something and everyone's like, oh, well, maybe this is the thing, maybe this is gonna happen. So of course Nintendo's going to shoot that down. They like to do things in their own unique ways. They like to do things like Nintendo Directs. Of course, you have the Game Awards coming up. Who knows what the hell's going to show up there? We've seen the Legend of Zelda stuff there before. Could we see Skyward Sword revealed there? There's supposedly 10 new games being unveiled at the Game Awards. Now, while I don't think that will be at the Game Awards, it's definitely a possibility. It's definitely a possibility the N64 Classic could pop up there as well. What I'm saying is, don't take everything at face value all the time. There's always things that you can find out about these stories. There's always things that you can research about these stories that sort of shows Nintendo's track record, where they tend to lie about things because they're not ready to announce it yet. And I definitely think the N64 Classic and Skyward Sword HD are two of these announcements, and they're two of the newer announcements that Nintendo is just sort of misdirecting you on. They're not ready to talk about it yet, so they're not going to talk about it yet. But does that mean that they're not coming? I don't think so. I'm definitely not going to jump the gun and say, oh no, the N64 Classic isn't coming, Skyward Sword HD isn't coming, because honestly, I think they are. But I want to know what you guys think of this situation. Do you think that the N64 Classic and Skyward Sword HD are real? Do you expect them to come out, or do you think that Nintendo isn't working on these things? Let me know in the comments section down below, and as always, thank you for checking out this video. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. Check out other videos on the channel, and as always, I will catch you guys on the next video. Later.